We're going to take a look at a document by Abigail Adams and answer a short answer question on this. So let's take a look at the short answer question first. So it says, briefly explain the point of view about gender expressed by Abigail Adams. So this is a point of view question. So it's the same kind of question as what we saw with the Boston Massacre and the tarring and feathering cartoon, except this time it uses a document instead of an image. And we're trying to figure out their point of view about gender specifically. So, what is it saying about gender and the role of women, probably expressed by Abigail Adams? So, this is a letter by Abigail Adams. So, the first thing we're going to look at is the sourcing information here. So, any document you get at, whether it's on a DBQ or a short answer question, you should always look at the sourcing information after you read the question. So this is from Abigail Adams, and you should think about, like, do you know who this person is? And you should. She is the wife of John Adams, and she's writing a letter to John Adams, her husband. And you should recognize his name because he was a Patriot leader. This is also written in March of 1776, so it's 4 months before the Declaration of Independence, which was written in July of 1776. So this is going to be important context. So in this document, she talks about, she's writing a letter to John Adams, and she talks about how she can't wait to hear that you've declared an independence. Basically, she knows that independence is coming, and she's looking forward to the day that the colonies are independent from Britain. And then she mentions here about how they're going to have to write a new code of law, so like a new constitution, a new form of government. And she says, when you do that, I want you to remember the ladies. This is the most famous part of this letter. When she says remember the ladies, what she means is don't forget about the contributions of women to the revolution, right? Women had to play a big role in the revolution. They played a role in terms of the boycotts, like the tea, since they were the primary tea drinkers, so it was their responsibility for the boycott. Also, their making of cloth so that people wouldn't have to buy British cloth. That was an important part of the effectiveness of the boycotts during the revolution. So she's reminding him to, like, don't forget about their contributions. Don't ignore those contributions, because, she wants them to be more generous and favorable than your ancestors. Like, that's the historical treatment. Treatment of women. Women have been forgotten. So she's urging him to, like, be better than previous generations. Okay, to do better. And she says, remember, all men would be tyrants if they could. What she means here, so a tyrant is somebody who takes advantage of their power. And she's saying here that all men would be tyrants. What she means is that the laws that existed, laws about owning property, about divorce and who has the power in divorce proceedings, inheriting property, all these laws all favored men. And so all these things, all three of these things, property, divorce, and inheritance, they all involve money. And that's power, right? So she's saying, like, men have taken advantage of their position. And she says if there's not attention paid to the ladies, if they're not remembered, she's like, we're going to rebel. We're not going to be listening to any laws that we don't have any say in. And she does this on purpose because she's a smart lady, right? And she's known for her intelligence. She says that she's making an argument similar to the argument of the colonists of no taxation without representation. Remember, the colonists said, why should we pay these taxes when we had no say in them? She's saying, why should we follow these new laws if we have no voice or representation there? Now, it should be important to note that she's not talking about voting rights for women necessarily. She's more focused on these kind of property-oriented things, right? And how, in terms of, women are treated when it comes to property. She's not advocating for true equality or anything like that. That's a misconception here. But she is arguing that women should be treated more fairly before the law. And she talks about how, like, men are naturally tyrannical. So she's saying these traditional gender roles, they've existed for a really long time. So we need to change that. We need to change the whole system. And she says that, if you want women to be happy, then husbands should be willing to give up being considered like a master of their wives and be more like a friend. So what she's advocating for here is a partnership. Like, she's saying marriage is a partnership. And this kind of mirrors her relationship with John Adams, right? This relationship was famous for the letters they wrote to each other. John Adams, in his positions as ambassador to Britain, as the president of the United States, he would ask his wife for advice, and she would give it to him through letters. And so they had a marriage of equals, not where one is superior to the other. So she's saying, like, hey, remember our marriage? Like, let's make sure that more marriages are like that. Let's make the laws so they're more favorable to women and not just completely favoring men all the time. Because she talks about how under the current system, women are treated like property. and that is not okay with her. So she's basically saying that, that women should be treated more fairly under the law. And since this revolution was about liberty and freedom, don't forget that when it comes to women as well, and change some of these long-standing traditions and be a better generation. So when you're answering the short answer question, your answer is going to be, what is her point of view about gender? What is she saying about gender, and particularly the role of women? Okay. You're citing evidence. You can pull a word or two from the document, not a big long quote, but maybe a couple of words that really get at her point of view. And then you're going to elaborate and talk about a bigger idea, that how does this tie into ideas of the revolution or the women's contribution to the revolution, that sort of thing. Where is this all coming from? Okay, so when you answer this question, you should be able to do all three of those things: your answer, cite, and elaborate. It's okay in this one instance to pull a word or two from the document, but not a quote of like a full sentence or anything like that.